Have you ever stood beneath an ancient archway and felt the weight of time pressing down on you? These towering stone passages aren't just relics of the past, they're silent witnesses to centuries of human ambition, mystery, and connection. From the sun-baked ruins of Petra to the shadowed gateways of medieval Europe, archways have served as portals between worlds, both literal and symbolic. They've welcomed conquerors, whispered secrets to pilgrims, and guarded treasures beyond imagination. And today, we're stepping through 30 of the most astonishing examples ever built, each one a doorway to stories that will leave you breathless. Picture this, a narrow stone passage carved into a cliff face, its edges worn smooth by countless hands over thousands of years. Who walked here? What ceremonies unfolded beneath this curve of rock? These structures aren't just feats of engineering, they're puzzles left behind by civilizations who believed arches held power, magic, even divine connection. Some were built to celebrate victory, others to ward off evil, and a few, well, their true purpose remains a mystery even now. That's the thrill of these portals. They don't just connect places, they bridge the gap between what we know and what we've yet to discover. This journey will take us across deserts, through jungles, and into the heart of forgotten cities. Along the way, you'll encounter arches that defy logic, gates that were never meant to be opened, and passageways that seem to bend the rules of time itself. We'll unravel why certain cultures believed these structures could channel celestial energy, how some were designed with mathematical precision that still stumps experts today, and which ones might still be hiding secrets in plain sight. So take a deep breath, because once we step through that first archway, there's no turning back. The past is waiting, and it has stories to tell. Rising above Rome's Via Sacra, the Arch of Titus has stood for nearly 2,000 years as a stone manifesto of imperial power. Built around 81 AD by Emperor Domitian to honor his deified brother Titus, this towering marble arch commemorates a brutal victory, the sacking of Jerusalem in 70 AD. Look closer at those weathered reliefs inside the passageway, and you'll see history carved in motion. Roman soldiers hauling the menorah from the Second Temple, the sacred trumpets of the Jews, all paraded through these very streets as spoils of war. This wasn't just decoration, it was psychological warfare in stone, a calculated display meant to cement Rome's dominance and Titus's godlike status. But here's what makes this archway extraordinary beyond its propaganda. The engineering is so precise that its keystone, the wedge at the very top, has withstood earthquakes, invasions, and centuries of pollution without collapsing. The Romans understood something profound about the arch's shape. It distributes weight so efficiently that even today, modern engineers study its curves. And those carvings, they're more than art. When Jewish rabbis visit, many still refuse to walk beneath them, the pain of that ancient conquest echoing across millennia. Yet the arch holds one final secret. Look up at the coffered ceiling inside the passage, and you'll notice something startling: medieval graffiti. Knights and pilgrims scratched their names here during the Middle Ages, turning a Roman monument into a guestbook of later history. Today, this arch isn't just a relic. It's a bridge between eras where the chisel marks of conquerors, the scrolls of crusaders, and the footsteps of modern tourists all intersect under one enduring curve of stone. Standing proudly at Mumbai's waterfront, the Gateway of India isn't just an arch, it's a chameleon of history. Built in 1924 to commemorate King George V's visit, this towering basalt structure began as a colonial symbol but transformed into something far more powerful. At first glance, its design seems purely Islamic, with those intricate latticework screens and pointed arches. But look closer, and you'll spot Hindu temple motifs woven into the stone, a silent rebellion by Indian craftsmen who embedded their heritage into the empire's monument. This gateway witnessed history's cruel irony. The same arches that once welcomed British rulers saw the last of their troops march beneath them when India gained independence in 1947. Today, the air hums with a different energy: street vendors selling spicy belpuri, families posing for photos, ferry horns blaring as boats leave for Elephanta Island's ancient caves. The stones seem to breathe with the city's rhythm, absorbing the laughter of children and the whispers of couples watching sunsets paint the Arabian Sea gold. What makes this archway extraordinary isn't just its past, but how it refuses to be frozen in time. By day, tourists marvel at its 26-meter-tall central dome. By night, it becomes a stage for impromptu dance performances and political protests alike. The gateway doesn't merely connect land and water, it bridges eras, ideologies, and the relentless pulse of a nation forever reinventing itself. Even the pigeons perched on its parapet seem to understand. This is where history doesn't rest but dances. Lost in the shadow of Rome's more famous triumphal arches, the Arch of Janus whispers secrets from an older, stranger world. This four-faced monument in the Forum Boreum isn't just architecturally unique, it's a riddle wrapped in travertine. Unlike the single-span arches lining Victory roads, this quadriform's design forms a massive square with vaulted passageways opening to all four cardinal directions. Walk through it today and you'll notice something eerie. The arch seems to watch you from every angle, its blank niches once likely holding statues of deities silently overseeing the chaos of ancient Rome's bustling cattle market. Scholars still debate who really built this enigmatic structure. The lack of inscriptions leaves clues strewn across centuries. Some say Constantine's era in the 4th century. Others argue for earlier pagan emperors honoring Janus, the two-faced god of beginnings and transitions. That name might be misleading though, because Janus traditionally only had 2 faces while this arch boasts 4. Perhaps it wasn't dedicated to him at all, but served as a cosmic crossroads where merchants invoked protection from all directions before risky voyages. The positioning fuels this theory, planted at the convergence of major roads leading to the Tiber's docks, where goods from across the Mediterranean flowed into Rome's hungry markets. The arch's hollow core hides its most fascinating secret. Climb the modern staircase added during 18th century restorations and peer inside the upper chamber. This hidden space likely hosted small-scale rituals, with smoke from offerings curling out through now-vanished roof openings. The 4 identical facades each held 12 niches, exactly matching the number of major Roman deities, suggesting this might have been a microcosm of the pantheon itself. Modern visitors rarely notice the subtle weathering patterns showing which arches saw most traffic. The northeast passage still bears the deepest grooves from 2 millennia of footfalls heading toward the river and the world beyond. What truly sets Janus apart is how stubbornly it resists categorization. Christian popes later defaced its pagan carvings yet left the structure standing. Renaissance artists sketched it as a romantic ruin while cattle still lowed around its base. Today, isolated amid scattered temple fragments, this architectural chimera remains, a silent sentinel at the crossroads of commerce, faith, and the ceaseless turning of history's page. Napoleon promised France an arch that would make the ancients die of envy, and the Arc de Triomphe delivered. Rising at the chaotic star of 12 Parisian avenues, this colossal monument began as one emperor's ego and became a nation's soul. Designed in 1806 to celebrate Austerlitz's victory, its construction spanned 3 turbulent decades, outliving Napoleon himself. The irony is palpable. A tribute to military conquest built by a defeated ruler now standing as democracy's stage. Every inch of this arch pulses with layered meaning. Look up at François Rude's La Marseillaise, the most iconic relief, where the winged spirit of liberty screams revolution, her sword urging citizens forward. Notice how her face contorts with urgency, her cloak billowing as if caught in history's stormwind. This isn't just art. its propaganda carved in stone, meant to stir patriotism long after Napoleon's empire crumbled. Yet the arch's other sculptures whisper different stories. Jean-Pierre Cortot's Triumph of Napoleon shows the emperor crowned by victory, but nearby, Antoinette's resistance and peace remind us of war's duality. The arch's geometry hides genius. At 50 meters tall, its proportions create an optical illusion. Stand directly beneath, and the vault seems to stretch infinitely upward, a deliberate trick to humble visitors. Names of Napoleonic victories and generals adorn its surfaces, but look closer. Strike-throughs mark battles later deemed too costly, the stone literally editing history. Modern life swirls around this relic. Every evening, the flame at the tomb of the unknown soldier is rekindled in a ritual unchanged since 1923. Racing cyclists circle it during the Tour de France's finale, while protesters march toward its shadow to amplify their voices. This arch has seen Nazi parades in 1940 and liberation celebrations in 1944, absorbing both France's shame and pride. Perhaps the most poignant detail lies beneath the arch's east pillar. There, a small plaque commemorates the spot where a young Charles de Gaulle, avoiding sniper fire during liberation, paused to salute the unknown soldier. In that moment, the arch wasn't just stone, it became a mirror reflecting France's endless cycle of struggle and renewal. Today, when national teams win championships, they don't parade down quiet boulevards, they converge here, where the arch's shadow stretches like an embrace, proving Napoleon's dream outgrew him entirely. In Athens, where gods and emperors once walked, the Arch of Hadrian stands as a silent argument carved in marble. Built around 131 AD, this elegant structure doesn't straddle a road like Roman triumphal arches. Instead, it slices the city in half with a bold declaration. On one side, the inscription reads, "This is Athens, the ancient city of Theseus." On the opposite face, it counters, "This is the city of Hadrian and not of Theseus." More than a boundary marker, this was a cultural line in the sand, separating Greece's legendary past from its Roman-dominated present. The arch's design whispers of careful diplomacy. Its Corinthian columns and graceful proportions deliberately echo the nearby temple of Olympian Zeus, a project started by Greek rulers but completed by Hadrian 6 centuries later. Every element feels calculated, the way the arch frames views of both the Acropolis and the Roman Quarter, how its two identical facades subtly differ in weathering patterns from centuries of Athenian hands brushing against one side more than the other. Some scholars argue this wasn't a true gateway at all, but a symbolic monument celebrating Hadrian's completion of the colossal temple nearby. Others point to rut marks in the surrounding stones as evidence of actual traffic passing through. What makes this arch extraordinary isn't just its dual identity, but the secrets lurking in its masonry. Look closely at the marble blocks, and you'll find abandoned dowel holes, proof the design changed mid-construction, possibly when Hadrian visited and demanded alterations. The keystone bears faint traces of what might have been a bronze statue, perhaps of the emperor himself overseeing his domain. Modern visitors often miss the most telling detail. The arch isn't perfectly aligned with either the ancient Greek or Roman street grids, standing askew as if caught between two worlds. Today, the structure serves a new purpose. By moonlight, its shadow falls across a parking lot where Athenian teens gather, their laughter bouncing off marble that once echoed with chariot wheels. The inscriptions still spark debate. Was Hadrian honoring Athens or claiming it? The arch refuses to answer, standing instead as a perfect metaphor for cities everywhere. Never just one thing, but layers of history arguing in stone. At the heart of Rome's Forum, the Arch of Septimius Severus stands as a masterclass in imperial propaganda wrapped in Carrara marble. Erected in 203 AD to celebrate victories over the Parthians, this triple-bored arch towers 19 meters high, its surfaces crammed with intricate reliefs that don't just depict war, they rewrite it. Every panel serves a calculated purpose to transform a messy Eastern campaign into a mythic triumph. The north face shows the emperor's sons, Caracalla and Geta, leading prisoners in chains, their faces idealized while the captured Parthians twist in exaggerated agony. Look closer at the south side's battle scenes, and you'll spot the real genius Roman soldiers building bridges and siege engines not just as military actions, but as symbols of civilization conquering chaos. What makes these carvings remarkable is their layered deception. Many Parthian figures were actually recarved from earlier Dacian captives, a quick visual rebranding when Severus needed new enemies to justify his wars. The weathering patterns reveal another truth: certain panels were deliberately placed at eye level for maximum impact, while less flattering scenes hovered above the crowd's sightlines. Even the arch's positioning was strategic, planted where triumphal processions turned toward the capital, forcing victorious generals to pass beneath Severus's version of military glory before receiving their own honors. Centuries later, medieval Romans didn't see an imperial monument, they saw prime real estate. By the 12th century, the arch's hollow attic had been converted into a fortified tower by the Frangipani family, its sculptures blackened by cooking fires. The lower arches were bricked up into shops, with ledger marks still visible where merchants chiseled accounts into the marble. This practical reuse ironically preserved the structure. The medieval additions acted as a protective shell against earthquakes and looters. Modern restorers face a dilemma: remove these later alterations to reveal the original form, or keep them as part of the arch's continuous life story. Today, the arch holds one final surprise underfoot. The original pavement level lies 2 meters below the current ground, meaning visitors unknowingly stand atop centuries of accumulated history. The lowest reliefs, once visible to ancient Romans, now hide beneath modern feet, their stories literally buried by time. Meanwhile, the most damaged carvings aren't from weathering but deliberate chiseling. After Caracalla murdered his brother Geta, he ordered all mentions eradicated, leaving ghostly blanks where a third imperial figure once stood. These erased spaces speak louder than the surviving art, reminding us that arches don't just commemorate history, they're battlegrounds where competing truths fight for stone immortality. Tucked away in the sleepy southern Italian town of Benevento, the Arch of Trajan tells a startlingly different story from Rome's bombastic victory monuments. While most triumphal arches scream military conquest, this perfectly preserved marble gateway whispers about roads, harbors, and grain distributions. Erected in 114 AD across the critical Appian Way, its sculptures form a rare visual catalogue of Trajan's civic generosity, an emperor more interested in being remembered as a builder than a destroyer. What grabs your attention first are the reliefs defying imperial norms. Instead of battle scenes, one panel shows Trajan personally supervising the construction of Via Traiana, his engineers measuring distances with rods while laborers carve through mountains. Another captures the emperor seated at a desk, calmly reviewing architectural plans, a far cry from the typical warlord imagery. The most striking tableau depicts the Alimenta program, Trajan handing coins to peasant families, his gesture frozen in stone as children clutch at his robes. These aren't just artistic choices, they're calculated propaganda for an emperor who understood that paved roads and full bellies bred loyalty more effectively than fear. The arch's location itself is revealing. Unlike Rome's central monuments, this stood where travelers paused before crossing the Apennines, guaranteeing provincial merchants and farmers would see these images daily. Modern visitors can still trace grooves in the pavement where cartwheels turn toward the bridge Trajan funded nearby, reinforcing the message: imperial power meant safe passage and thriving trade. Look closely at the attic's inscription. It doesn't mention military titles, but highlights Trajan as the best ruler, a title voted by the Senate for his civic works. Benevento's arch hides architectural rebellion beneath its classical facade. The interior vault's coffered ceiling displays an unusual sunflower pattern, possibly a nod to local sun worship later Christianized into halos. 8 niches once held statues of deities, but their empty pedestals tell another story. When lightning struck the arch in the Middle Ages, locals interpreted it as pagan wrath and removed the idols. Today, the structure serves as an accidental time capsule. Its sheltered position spared it from the acid rain that eroded Rome's monuments, leaving details like the folds of Trajan's toga startlingly crisp. Perhaps the most poignant detail is what's missing. Unlike later arches dripping with spoils of war, there's not a single captured enemy or weapon in sight. Instead, the spandrels feature personifications of rivers Trajan bridged, and the keystone shows the emperor shaking hands with a personified Italia, not conquering her but partnering. As tourists from cruise ships crowd Rome's better-known arches, this overlooked masterpiece waits quietly in the south, its stones still radiating Trajan's radical idea that greatness could be measured in cobblestones and children fed, not just territories claimed. In Thessaloniki, where Byzantine domes pierce the sky, the Arch of Galerius stands as a stone war chronicle that time forgot to erase. Built in 298 AD to celebrate Emperor Galerius's crushing defeat of the Sassanid Persians, this 4-sided monument was originally part of a massive rotunda complex, half imperial propaganda, half mausoleum. Today, only one pier remains, but its sculpted panels explode with motion, capturing warfare so vividly you can almost hear the clashing swords and screaming horses. Closest to the ground, Persian nobles kneel in surrender, their ornate trousers and curled beads meticulously detailed even after 17 centuries of weathering. Above them, Galerius charges on horseback, his spear aimed not just at enemies but at the viewer's imagination. The real storytelling genius lies in the sequencing panels flow like a comic strip, showing the campaign from marching legions to the climactic moment when the Persian king's women beg for mercy. Look closely at the central scene. Roman soldiers construct a pontoon bridge across the Tigris, their muscles straining as they hammer pegs, a testament to engineering as much as brute force. But here's where history twists. The arch wasn't meant to stand alone. It once connected to Galerius's palace via a processional road, framing views of his colossal rot, and originally intended as his tomb, later converted into the Church of St. George. That conversion scrubbed the arch's pagan past with a new purpose. Medieval masons bricked up some arches to stabilize the structure, inadvertently preserving the lower reliefs from erosion. The once triumphal monument became a bystander to baptisms and burials, its battle scenes now overlooking priests carrying incense. Modern visitors often miss the most haunting detail. On the arch's north side, a Persian soldier falls backward, his shield slipping, a moment of vulnerability rare in Roman victory art. Nearby, a camel train lumbers under the weight of stolen treasures, their rope bindings carved with such precision you can count the strands. These aren't generic enemies, they're individuals frozen in defeat, humanizing a monument meant to dehumanize them. The stone itself tells another story. The reddish marble came from quarries near Sparta, hauled across the Aegean at tremendous cost, while the sculptors were likely brought from Rome, an imperial flex of resources and talent. Today, the arch stands at a busy intersection, its Persian captives silently watching trams rattle past. At sunset, the reliefs catch the light diagonally, making spears and chariot wheels cast shadows that seem to move across the stone as if the battles refused to end. The Arch of Constantine isn't just a monument, it's a marble jigsaw puzzle where history got cleverly rearranged. Towering beside the Colosseum, this 3-bay colossus erected in 315 AD celebrates Constantine's victory at Milvian Bridge. But here's the twist. Nearly every sculpture was looted from earlier monuments to Trajan, Hadrian, and Marcus Aurelius. Walk around its curves and you'll spot the seams where heads were recarved, bodies repurposed, and identities rewritten, ancient Rome's version of political photoshopping. The new sections made for Constantine are easy to spot. Compare the stiff, flat reliefs of his era with the fluid mastery of Trajan's Dacian Wars panels, where horsemen seem to leap from the stone. This arch plays a sly game with faith. At its apex, you'd expect Christian symbols celebrating Constantine's famous vision of the cross. Instead, pagan figures like Hercules and Victoria flank inscriptions thanking the inspiration of divinity, carefully vague wording that let pagans and Christians both claim it. The real surprise hides in the frieze wrapping the attic. Circular medallions from Hadrian's time show hunting scenes, their original pagan meanings subtly subverted. Where Hadrian sacrificed to Diana, Constantine's artists added crosses in the background, transforming them into allegories of Christian triumph. What cements this arch's legacy isn't just its hybrid art, but its stolen valor. The 8 majestic Dacian prisoners atop the columns, plundered from Trajan's Forum, the Auraline panels showing imperial generosity, repurposed to suggest Constantine shared those virtues. Even the massive heads in the central keystone were recut from older portraits. This wasn't just recycling, it was visual propaganda claiming Constantine inherited the greatness of Rome's 5 good emperors. Centuries later, Napoleon would mimic this very strategy when designing his Arc de Triomphe, proving Constantine's architects knew something timeless. When you lack artistic genius, borrow someone else's and rebrand it. Today, sunlight filters through its arches onto tourists snapping selfies, few realizing they're standing before history's most audacious art heist, a monument where every stolen sculpture whispers that power belongs to those who rewrite the narrative. Rising alone amidst orange groves in Spain's Castellon province, the Arch of Cabanes feels less like a monument and more like a ghost. This single, solitary archway stretches across an empty stretch of the old Via Augusta, its weathered limestone blocks bleached white by centuries of Mediterranean sun. Unlike Rome's triumphal arches, there's no city around it, no grand plaza, just the whisper of olive leaves and the distant bells of grazing sheep. Built in the 2nd century AD, its purpose remains tantalizingly unclear. Some scholars argue it marked a boundary between Roman territories, while others insist its proportions suggest something darker, a funerary arch guarding the tomb of some long-forgotten dignitary. Walk beneath its curve today and you'll notice something strange. The interior stones bear faint, almost ghostly carvings, worn-down faces that might represent mourners or deities. Local legend claims these figures come alive at midnight, their stone lips moving in silent lament. More concrete is the arch's peculiar orientation. It aligns perfectly with the winter solstice sunrise, casting a blade of light that once illuminated a now vanished altar. Farmers here still tell of Roman coins and pottery shards turning up after heavy rains, as if the earth refuses to forget what official history has lost. The arch's survival is its own mystery. While most Roman structures were quarried for medieval churches or fortresses, this one stood untouched, possibly because superstitious locals believed disturbing it would awaken something. Even the 16th century hermits who built a chapel nearby left the arch eerily intact, incorporating its shadow into their processional routes. Modern archaeologists discovered charred animal bones beneath its foundations, hinting at sacrifices meant to consecrate this liminal space between worlds. What truly chills the spine, though, is the arch's acoustic quirk. Stand directly beneath its apex and clap your hands. The echo doesn't return as expected. Instead, the sound warps, stretching into a muffled reverberation that seems to come from underground. Engineers can't fully explain this phenomenon, though some suggest hollow chambers might lie beneath, perhaps the very tombs the arch was built to commemorate. As dusk falls over Cabanes, bats swirl through its opening like living shadows, and for a moment you can almost hear the faint jingle of a Roman funerary procession lost to time. In the heart of Croatia's coastal city of Pula, the Arch of the Sergii stands not as a monument to military conquest, but to something far more human, a family's enduring love. Built around 27 BC, this golden-hued archway was commissioned by the wealthy Sergii family to honor three brothers who died young, possibly in Rome's civil wars. Unlike the empire's bombastic victory arches, this structure whispers intimacy, its Corinthian columns framing not marching legions, but the quiet grief of parents who outlived their children. What immediately strikes you is its architectural duality. The upper portion screams Roman influence, fluted columns, ornate acanthus leaves, and a frieze depicting a chariot race straight from the Circus Maximus. But look closer at the base and you'll spot distinctly local touches. The stone bears tool marks from Istrian masons, and the proportions feel slightly compressed, as if squeezed into Pulla's existing street grid. This wasn't Roman engineering imposed on conquered land. It was a cultural dialogue in stone where Mediterranean grandeur met Adriatic pragmatism. The arch's survival story is equally fascinating. When medieval Pulla needed space for new city walls, the arch wasn't demolished, it was incorporated. One side became part of a defensive tower, its sculptures hidden beneath layers of brickwork that ironically preserved them from weathering. The other side remained exposed, becoming a familiar landmark where sailors painted crude crosses for safe voyages. Even Napoleon's troops, infamous for plundering monuments, left it untouched, perhaps because locals had long repurposed its hollow interior as a shrine to Saint Sergius, blending pagan and Christian veneration. Today, the arch guards secrets in plain sight. Run your fingers along the eastern column's base, and you'll feel grooves worn smooth by centuries of merchants sharpening knives, a mundane act that inadvertently polished the stone to a mirror shine. At noon, sunlight pierces a small hole in the pediment, casting a coin-shaped spotlight on the pavement that moves like a sundial. Local lore claims this spot marks where the youngest Sergius brother fell in battle, his blood staining the earth until his family sealed the memory in stone. What truly sets this arch apart is its afterlife as a cultural chameleon. Renaissance artists sketched it as a Roman relic, 19th century poets romanticized it as a symbol of lost youth, and today it serves as the ceremonial entrance to Pulla's annual film festival. Each evening, projections transform its ancient surface into a cinema screen, the chariots on its frieze seeming to race again after 2,000 years. In a city where Roman amphitheaters still host concerts and temples house cafes, the Arch of the Sergii stands as proof that grief, when carved with skill, can outlast empires. Rising from the olive groves of northern Morocco, the Arch of Caracalla in Volubilis stands as a monument to excess and seismic resilience. Built in 217 AD, this towering gateway honors one of Rome's most infamous emperors, a ruler who murdered his own brother and bathed in the blood of gladiators. Yet here, on the empire's southern frontier, the arch wasn't just a celebration of imperial madness. It was a calculated display of Roman power aimed at local Berber tribes. The inscriptions proclaim Caracalla as restorer of the world, a laughable exaggeration until you consider its audience, wealthy olive oil merchants and auxiliaries who needed to believe in Rome's invincibility. Walk through its surviving central arch today and you'll notice something peculiar. The structure leans slightly northeast, not from poor construction, but because of the massive 1755 Lisbon earthquake that shattered this region. The same tremor that leveled cathedrals in Portugal cracked Volubilis's arches like eggshells, yet Caracalla's namesake refused to fully collapse. Modern engineers discovered why. The builders used a flexible mortar mixed with volcanic ash, allowing the stones to shift without crumbling, a technique centuries ahead of its time. The earthquake also exposed the arch's hidden reinforcement. Iron clamps originally concealed beneath marble veneer now protrude like skeletal fingers, revealing how Roman engineers anticipated this unstable seismic zone. The carvings tell another story. Unlike Rome's triumphant battle scenes, these reliefs focus on prosperity, bounty from the sea, overflowing cornucopias, and toga-clad figures receiving taxes from Berber chieftains. This was propaganda tailored to volubilis's booming economy, where olive presses produced oil shipped as far as Britain. Look closely at the eroded eastern panel and you'll spot something startling, traces of blue and red pigment still clinging to the stone. When French archaeologists excavated this site in the 1920s, they found evidence the entire arch was once painted in garish colors, a far cry from the bleached marble we associate with Roman grandeur. What truly fascinates isn't the arch itself, but what surrounds it, or rather, what doesn't. The structure originally straddled Volubilis's main street, yet today it stands isolated amidst ruins. The reason lies beneath your feet. Excavations revealed the road was deliberately dismantled in late antiquity, the paving stones hauled away to build defensive walls as Roman power waned. The arch became a useless relic overnight, too massive to destroy but stripped of its purpose. Local folklore adds another layer. For centuries, Moroccan women unable to conceive would walk backward through the arch at dawn, believing Caracalla's violent spirit could somehow grant fertility. The practice only stopped in the 1950s when a French anthropologist documented streaks of blood on the keystone, evidence of sacrificed chickens left as offerings. Today, the arch serves a different kind of magic. At sunset, its shadow stretches across the archaeological park like a sundial, pointing successively to the ruins of a brothel, a basilica, and finally the distant Atlas Mountains, a silent map of Volubilis's worldly pleasures, imperial authority, and the wild lands Rome never truly tamed. In the sun-baked Provençal town of Orange, the Arch of Tiberius looms with quiet audacity, a triple-arched anomaly that turns military mediocrity into marble propaganda. Unlike Rome's bombastic victory monuments, this 19-meter-wide structure celebrates not conquest but consolidation. Erected around 20 AD, its intricate reliefs depict Tiberius's greatest triumph, a naval skirmish so minor historians barely mention it. That's the arch's first clue to read between the chisel marks. The battles shown here, the defeat of the Germanic tribes and a vague maritime encounter, were actually won by his adopted sons, not Tiberius himself. The real message lies in the architecture. 3 arches symbolizing the Julio-Claudian dynasty's continuity, with the central vault taller and wider, framing Tiberius as the literal and figurative keystone holding the empire together. Walk closer and the stone comes alive with maritime chaos. The north face's naval battle swirls with doomed ships, their rigging carved so finely you can almost hear sails snapping in the storm. Roman triremes ram barbarian vessels, but notice the curious detail: the enemy boats lack any national insignia. This wasn't an oversight. Tiberius, ever paranoid about rivals, deliberately kept the foes generic to avoid glorifying any particular commander's victory. The panels hide another secret. Many figures were recarved from an earlier monument to Augustus, their faces altered just enough to represent new heroes. What makes this arch revolutionary is its three-dimensional storytelling. Unlike flat Roman reliefs, the orange sculptures use overlapping planes to create depth. Sailors in the foreground appear almost freestanding, while distant galleys fade into shallow etching. This technique, possibly borrowed from Hellenistic artists, gives the illusion of countless ships when only a dozen are actually carved. The Attic's inscription reinforces the illusion, boasting of pacified peoples, when Tiberius mostly inherited stable borders from Augustus. Even the arch's positioning was strategic, planted where the Via Agrippa entered town, forcing travelers to pass beneath this sanitized version of history before reaching the theater's more candid imperial statues. The arch's resilience is its own marvel. During the Wars of Religion, Huguenots used it as a fortress, drilling holes for cannons that still scar the stone. Yet the delicate friezes survived, protected by centuries of accumulated grime, until 19th century restorers revealed them. Today, the morning sun illuminates a detail most tourists miss. The shadow of the central arch's keystone forms a perfect dagger shape at winter solstice, pointing to where Tiberius's now vanished bronze statue once stood. Local legend says this shadow grows sharper on the anniversary of his death, as if the stones themselves remember the emperor who built monuments not to glory, but to the careful curation of legacy. Standing in Tripoli's Martyrs Square, the Arch of Marcus Aurelius tells a story of survival against impossible odds. Erected around 165 AD to celebrate Roman victories over the Parthians, this marble gateway originally straddled the bustling coastal road of ancient Tyre. But here's what makes it extraordinary: it's not where it began. When archaeologists first studied the arch in the 19th century, they found something baffling. The foundation stones didn't match the structure's style. The truth, this arch had been meticulously dismantled and moved stone by stone during the late Roman era, likely to serve as a ceremonial entrance for a governor's palace that no longer exists. The relocation explains why some panels appear slightly misaligned, their edges worn from being hoisted and reset by laborers 15 centuries ago. The reliefs themselves defy expectations. Unlike most triumphal arches that glorify battlefield slaughter, these carvings showcase Marcus Aurelius's famed compassion. One panel depicts the emperor standing over kneeling Parthian captives, not with a raised sword but with an outstretched hand offering clemency. Another shows Roman soldiers distributing grain to conquered cities, their armor gleaming but their weapons sheathed. Even the battle scenes focus on engineering triumphs, siege towers rolling toward fortress walls, engineers diverting rivers to starve out enemies. These weren't just artistic choices, they reflected Aurelius's Stoic philosophy, captured in his personal writings. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Modern conflict nearly erased this masterpiece. During World War II, British artillery strikes chipped the arch's northwest corner, leaving pockmarks still visible today. More recently, the 2011 Libyan revolution saw sniper fire ricochet off its marble surfaces. The bullet's impact sites later filled with a distinctive pink mortar that tells its own story of repair. Conservationists made a startling discovery during post-war restoration. Traces of blue and gold pigment in the arch's crevices revealed it was once painted to resemble the sky at dawn, a symbolic gateway between earth and heaven. The arch's quiet resilience continues to astonish. Its columns bear grooves from medieval ropes when the structure was used as a gallows, yet the delicate laurel wreaths carved above remain intact. Local legends claim the shadow of Aurelius's statue once cast at noon pointed directly to an underground spring, now buried beneath the square's pavement. Today, the arch stands as an accidental diplomat. Italian restorers preserved its Roman heritage during colonial rule. Libyan archaeologists protected it from extremist groups seeking to destroy pagan art. And now international researchers collaborate to digitize its reliefs before rising sea levels threaten the coast. Every scratch on its surface whispers a lesson Aurelius himself might have admired. That true endurance comes not from dominating others, but from bending without breaking. The Arch of Augustus in Rimini doesn't roar with imperial grandeur, it hums with the quiet confidence of Rome's early power. Built in 27 BC, this unassuming travertine arch marked where the Via Flaminia, that vital artery connecting Rome to the Adriatic, finally kissed the sea. Unlike later triumphal arches dripping with carvings, its smooth surfaces bear just two inscriptions, one honoring Augustus, the other the Senate and people of Rome. That restraint speaks volumes. This wasn't propaganda, it was infrastructure with a whisper of authority, a stone handshake between republic and empire. Look closely at the arch's proportions, and you'll spot genius disguised as simplicity. The single vault stands exactly as wide as the original road, its height calibrated to let ox carts pass beneath without scraping their loads. The attic once held statues of Augustus and his heirs, but their absence now reveals the arch's secret strength: 4 massive iron clamps hidden within the masonry, still binding the blocks after 2 millennia. Local legends claim these metal bones were forged from captured Celtic swords, melted down after the very battles that secured this frontier. What truly transformed this arch was its medieval afterlife. By the 9th century, Rimini's growing walls engulfed it, turning a ceremonial gateway into a functional city gate. The original bronze letters spelling Augustus's name were pried off for coins, the empty notches later filled with bricks that still blush red against the pale stone. Yet the arch adapted, its sides became guard towers, its vault a murder hole for dropping boiling oil on invaders. During World War II, German troops actually spared it from demolition, its enduring solidity somehow convincing officers it was Renaissance work not worth their explosives. Today, the arch performs its most unexpected role. Every evening at dusk, the setting sun aligns perfectly with its opening, casting a beam that illuminates a mosaic in Rimini's modern train station, a sly nod to how this ancient checkpoint still guides travelers. The stones themselves seem to breathe with history. If you press your ear against them during summer storms, locals swear you can hear the echo of legionary boots marching north, forever beginning their journey beneath this silent sentinel of stone. Along the Charente River in southwestern France, the Arch of Germanicus stands as a marble paradox, a monument to imperial succession that outlasted the very dynasty it celebrated. Built in 18 or 19 AD by a wealthy local official, this elegant single-arched gateway originally straddled the Roman road leading into Mediolanum Sanctorum, today's Saints. At first glance, its delicate Corinthian columns and compact scale seem modest compared to Rome's towering triumphal arches, but the true power lies in its inscriptions, which pulse with political urgency. The dedicatory plaque names not just Germanicus, the Golden Boy, heir to Emperor Tiberius, but also his young sons, including the future Emperor Caligula. This was no accident. The arch's builder, C. Julius Rufus, strategically tied his provincial prestige to the imperial family's most beloved branch, gambling on a future that would collapse in bloodshed within decades. The arch's survival is a tale of bureaucratic ingenuity. When 19th-century engineers needed to widen the quays along the Charente, the arch stood directly in their path. Rather than demolish it, they orchestrated something unprecedented. In 1843, the entire structure was carefully disassembled and moved stone by stone 30 meters away. The relocation revealed hidden clues, numbering systems scratched on blocks by Roman laborers, iron cramps designed to flex with seismic shifts, and traces of original paint suggesting the arch once gleamed in ochre and azure. Most poignant was the discovery of a hollow chamber in the attic, possibly used to store civic documents or offerings to the imperial cult, now filled with centuries of wind-blown seeds and nested birds. What makes this arch extraordinary isn't its grandeur, but its heartbreaking irony. The inscriptions praise Germanicus as the hope of Rome, a man destined to rule who instead died mysteriously in Syria, likely poisoned on Tiberius's orders. The mention of his sons feels equally tragic. 2 were executed by Tiberius, while Caligula would later become one of Rome's most deranged emperors. The arch's builder couldn't have foreseen this carnage when commissioning such costly Carrara marble. Yet the structure's very existence reveals how provincial elites navigated imperial politics, flattering the center of power while banking on favor that might never materialize. Modern visitors often miss the most telling detail. Unlike typical Roman arches aligned with cardo roads, this one angles slightly southeast, not toward Rome, but toward the local tribal sanctuary of a Celtic healing goddess. This subtle pivot suggests the arch served dual purposes, a nod to imperial authority for Roman officials entering town, and a gesture of respect to local beliefs for citizens leaving toward sacred springs. Today, the arch stands quietly near Saints' modern law courts, its stones bearing the faint scars of revolutionary fervor when tyranny was chiseled over Germanicus's name, only to be carefully restored later. The real testament to its endurance, the evening shadow it casts still traces the original Roman road's path, a ghostly imprint of empire on the landscape it was moved to escape. Tucked away on Rome's Caelian hill, the Arch of Dolabella seems almost embarrassed by its own plainness. Unlike the city's flamboyant triumphal arches, this unadorned travertine gateway has no reliefs of conquest, no gilded inscriptions, just a single austere vault standing 10 meters tall. But its simplicity hides a backstory richer than its flashier cousins. Built in 10 AD by the consuls Dolabella and Silanus, this arch wasn't celebrating military glory. It was civic infrastructure masquerading as architecture. The two men weren't generals but bureaucrats tasked with extending Rome's water system, and their arch doubled as both ceremonial marker and aqueduct support. Look closely at the arch's shoulders, and you'll spot grooves where lead pipes once clung, funneling water from the Aqua Claudia to Nero's Golden House and later the baths of Caracalla. The true engineering marvel lies in the attic, a hidden channel precisely angled to maintain water flow without undermining the structure. Medieval locals called it Arco della Conduttura, naming it for function rather than form. Even the stone itself tells a story of pragmatism. The blocks were quarried from the same Tivoli travertine used for the Colosseum, but left rough-hewn to cut costs, their unfinished surfaces still bearing chisel marks from rushed laborers. What makes this arch extraordinary is how it quietly adapted to Rome's changing needs. By the 4th century, it became part of the Aurelian walls, its hollow core repurposed as a guard tower. Centuries later, monks from the nearby Basilica of Santi Giovanni e Paolo hacked a staircase into its side, converting the attic into a lookout post against Saracen raiders. The arch's most surprising chapter came in the 1600s when it supported a clandestine convent garden, its vault nurturing lemon trees watered by the same ancient pipes it once carried. Today, the arch stands nearly forgotten between auto repair shops and apartment buildings. Tourists rushing to the nearby Colosseum rarely glance up at its weathered keystone, where the original inscription has eroded to near illegibility. But if you visit at dawn, when sunlight slants through its opening, you'll notice something poetic. The shadow it casts perfectly frames the distant dome of St. Peter's, linking imperial engineering to Renaissance grandeur across 15 silent centuries. No conquerors march beneath it now, just stray cats and the occasional historian, all dwarfed by an arch that never needed carvings to prove its worth. Looming unexpectedly in the quiet countryside north of Rome, the Arch of Malborghetto might be history's most consequential barn. This rough-hewn brick arch, now half buried in a medieval farmhouse, could mark the very spot where Constantine's life and Western history changed forever. Local farmers long dismissed it as just another rustic relic until archaeologists noticed something startling. The core of this humble structure is a 4th century Roman tetrapylon, a 4-way ceremonial arch eerily aligned with the Via Flaminia at the precise distance where Constantine's army would have camped the night before Milvian Bridge. The timing is too perfect. This arch likely stood when tradition claims Constantine saw his famous heavenly vision of the cross. Step inside what's now a small museum, and the layers unfold like a time capsule. The original Roman bricks form a perfect cruciform shape, their mortar mixed with volcanic ash for strength, while later medieval additions huddle around them like protective shells. Look up at the vault's apex and you'll see where 9th century Christians painted a fresco of Christ Pantocrator directly over what might have been pagan stucco decorations. The real smoking gun, ground-penetrating radar revealed foundations extending far beyond the current structure, suggesting this was once a grand imperial stopping point where an emperor might receive omens before battle. What makes Malborghetto extraordinary isn't just its possible Constantine connection, but its stubborn refusal to die. When barbarian invasions made the countryside dangerous, locals gutted the arch's interior, transforming it into a fortified watchtower. By the 12th century, it had become a church dedicated to St. Peter, the arches partially bricked up to create a nave. The altar stone, still visible today, was repurposed from a Roman milestone. During the Renaissance, farmers stacked hay in the vaulted spaces, their oil lamps blackening the ancient bricks with soot that paradoxically preserved delicate mortar lines. Modern visitors often miss the most poetic detail. On the summer solstice, sunlight pierces a slit in the medieval wall, illuminating a crude Cairo symbol scratched into a Roman brick, whether by a 4th century soldier or a pious medieval monk, no one knows. The arch's current caretakers, a family of retired cheesemakers, still scrape wax from the stones where generations lit candles to saints who shared space with ghosts of emperors. Unlike Rome's polished monuments, Malborghetto wears its history raw, every crack and patch whispering how sacredness lingers in places long after their original purpose fades. Rising like a stone sentinel in Verona's bustling Piazza del Erbe, the Arch of the Gavii defies every expectation of Roman monumentality. Built around the 1st century AD, this towering structure wasn't commissioned by emperors or generals, but by a single wealthy family, a rarity in an era when arches typically glorified state power. The Gavii, likely wealthy merchants or landowners, constructed this as both a grand tomb and a bold statement of civic pride. Unlike the empire's bombastic victory arches, this one whispers intimacy, its inscriptions naming individual family members, to Titus Gavius Epaphroditus, his brother Gaius, and their father Publius. These weren't conquerors to be feared, but neighbors to be remembered. Step closer, and the arch reveals its genius. The design mimics Rome's triumphal arches, but with deliberate tweaks. The proportions slightly squatter to fit Verona's narrower streets, the decorative Corinthian columns scaled down to human proportions. Most striking are the niches flanking the central vault, which once held statues of the deceased, their poses frozen in eternal conversation. Local legend claims medieval residents would leave flowers here, mistaking the Gavii for early Christian saints. The arch's survival through Verona's chaotic growth is a marvel in itself. When medieval buildings crowded in, the structure wasn't demolished but repurposed. One side became part of a butcher's shop, the other a blacksmith's forge, the soot from their fires inadvertently preserving delicate carvings beneath. The true miracle lies in the attic. Unlike hollow imperial arches, this one contains a hidden chamber, likely the family's original tomb, later converted into a medieval watchtower. Restoration work in the 1980s uncovered fragments of funerary urns and a mosaic floor depicting Orpheus' charming animals, suggesting the Gavii embraced both Roman and Greek afterlife beliefs. The most poignant discovery, charred olive pits and chicken bones in the chamber's corners, evidence of ancestor offerings that continued centuries after the family line vanished. Today, the arch stands as a testament to private devotion outlasting empires. Market stalls selling fresh peaches and silk scarves nestle against its base, their awnings fluttering beneath the same stones that once shaded funeral processions. At noon, sunlight filters through iron grates installed in the Renaissance, casting dappled shadows that trace the outlines of long-gone statues. The arch's resilience is its own elegy, a family's name carved not on battlefield trophies, but on the living fabric of a city that forgot their story yet kept their stone voice alive. Tucked away in a quiet corner near Rome's ancient cattle market, the Arch of the Argentarii doesn't announce itself with grandeur. It lurks. This understated gateway, commissioned by the city's money changers and cattle dealers in 204 AD, holds a dark secret in its marble skin. Unlike the empire's triumphal arches, this was never meant to celebrate military victories. Instead, it served as a loyalty test carved in stone, its surfaces scrubbed clean of faces that fell from imperial favor. Walk up to its weathered frames today, and you'll notice ghostly outlines where portraits once glared, empty spaces that whisper of political purges and the dangerous game of aligning with power. The arch's location is the first clue to its purpose. Nestled beside the Forum Boreum, Rome's bustling livestock and financial district, it stood where wealth and meat met, a fitting monument for the wealthy guild of Argentarii or bankers who funded it. But look closer at those jagged erasures. The most glaring absence is Geta, the younger son of Septimius Severus, whose face and name were systematically chiseled away after his brother Caracalla murdered him. The stone still bears the frantic gouges of this damnatio memoriae, the ritual obliteration of a disgraced ruler's legacy. Even more intriguing are the patches where older deletions lie beneath newer ones, like layers of political violence frozen in marble. What makes this arch extraordinary isn't just who was erased, but who remained. Despite the purge, the bankers left one controversial figure intact: Julia Domna, Geta and Caracalla's mother. Her serene face still gazes from the arch's inner panel, a startling survival that hints at backroom deals or perhaps the guild's quiet defiance. The inscriptions, too, play a sly game. Words like liberality and piety are carved deep, while names of fallen emperors are shallowly etched, as if anticipating their eventual removal. Modern laser scans revealed something even more telling. The original lettering beneath the visible text praised Geta extensively, hastily plastered over with generic praises of the imperial house when his star fell. The arch's survival is its own mystery. While most pagan monuments were destroyed or repurposed by Christians, this one slipped through the cracks, possibly because medieval butchers found its hollow niches perfect for hanging sausages. The soot from their smoke chambers accidentally preserved delicate tool marks that show how the erasures were done, not in one angry purge but in waves as political winds shifted. Today, the arch stands wedged between a medieval church and a Renaissance palazzo, its shadow falling each afternoon on a stretch of original Roman road where the grooves of ancient cartwheels still mark the stone. Visitors who pause here at dusk sometimes report a chill near the empty spaces where faces once smiled, a reminder that even marble can't always outlive the wrath of emperors. On the sun-baked coast of Libya, where the Mediterranean meets the Sahara, the Arch of Septimius Severus rises like a mirage from golden sands, a monument so extravagant it nearly bankrupted the emperor's hometown. Built in 203 AD to celebrate Severus's visit to Leptis Magna, this four-way arch wasn't just a victory monument, it was a colossal thank-you note from a local boy made good. Unlike Rome's arches that glorified conquest, this structure drips with hometown pride, its marble quarried from Greece, its columns shipped from Egypt, all assembled with North African flair to shout one message: even emperors remember where they came from. Step beneath its soaring vaults, and the carvings tell a story of calculated opulence. Severus didn't just depict battles here, he showcased his family like divine royalty. His wife Julia Domna appears as Juno, her drapery carved so thin the marble seems to flutter. His sons Geta and Caracalla, years before their deadly feud, stand frozen in stone harmony, their faces idealized echoes of their fathers. The most telling detail, scenes of Leptis Magna's harbor crammed with grain ships, a none too subtle reminder that Severus's reign meant prosperity for this once sleepy trading port. What makes this arch an engineering marvel is its tetrapylon design, four identical facades facing the compass points, each leading to a different quarter of the city. The precision is staggering. During the equinoxes, sunlight pierces all four arches simultaneously, creating a cross of light on the forum's pavement that aligned with now vanished altars. Local guides whisper that the acoustics inside the central chamber were tuned so precisely that a whisper at one corner could be heard clearly at the opposite diagonal, a feature Severus might have used for dramatic pronouncements. The desert played its part in preservation. When Leptis Magna declined, Sahara winds buried the arch up to its capitals, ironically shielding its lower reliefs from centuries of weathering. Excavations in the 1920s revealed something startling. the original colors. Faint traces of blue, red, and gold clung to crevices, evidence that every god, chariot, and ocean wave once blazed with pigment. Even the tiniest details survived. Grapes on Dionysian reliefs still glisten with resin droplets meant to mimic dew, and the carved ropes on ship prows show individual fibers. Today, the arch stands at a crossroads of history and conflict. Mussolini's archaeologists partially rebuilt it in the 1930s, using modern concrete that now threatens the original stone with salt damage. During the 2011 revolution, rebels guarded it from looters, recognizing its cultural weight. The sand that once buried it continues its slow reclaiming. Each morning, caretakers sweep new drifts from the base, a daily reminder that even emperors can't stop time's tide. Yet for all its grandeur, the arch's most human touch remains a small, crude carving hidden on the northeast pier. A local artist's portrait of young Severus as a boy, peeking from behind an imperial panel like a hometown secret waiting to be rediscovered. High on a wind-swept hill in Tunisia, the Arch of Alexander Severus stands as a stone handshake between two worlds. Unlike Rome's imperial arches that scream conquest, this gracefully proportioned gateway in Duggar whispers collaboration, a testament to the vibrant fusion of Roman engineering and Berber artistry. Built around 228 AD to honor the young emperor's visit, its design reflects a delicate compromise. Corinthian columns and Latin inscriptions frame carvings of local deities and Berber geometric patterns, as if the stones themselves couldn't decide which culture they belonged to. The arch's location tells its own story. It didn't straddle a major road, but the sacred path linking Duggar's Roman Forum to its Numidian-era mausoleum, a deliberate nod to the town's layered history. Look closely at the Attic reliefs and you'll spot something startling. Alongside Roman eagles, palm fronds and crescent moons peek from the corners, symbols of the Berber moon god Gurzil. Even the construction materials reveal cultural blending. The creamy limestone was quarried locally, but the marble for the inscriptions came from as far as Greece, hauled across the Mediterranean by merchants who probably paid for the arch's construction through taxes levied on olive oil exports. What makes this monument extraordinary isn't just its hybrid artistry, but its civic audacity. Duggar was never a major imperial city, yet its residents, a mix of Roman settlers and Berber elites, pooled resources to build something rivaling Rome's grandest arches. The inscriptions boast not of military victories but of civic virtues, to the restoration of public harmony and for the prosperity of our children. This was no emperor's vanity project. It was a small town's declaration that they, too, deserved beauty. Time has been both cruel and kind to the arch. Earthquakes toppled nearby temples, but this structure endured, its survival aided by an ingenious feature: slightly tapered columns that flexed during tremors. Medieval shepherds used its hollow attic to store cheese, the salt in the way accidentally preserving the stone from erosion. Today, the arch frames a view that steals your breath. Rolling olive groves give way to the ruins of Duggar's theatre and capital, while in the distance, the modern world flickers like a mirage. The most poignant detail lies hidden in plain sight. On the arch's eastern face, a weathered carving shows Alexander Severus receiving a petition, not from Roman senators, but from a Berber chieftain in traditional cloak and leather boots. The emperor leans forward attentively, his hand extended not in dominance but in dialogue. It's a fleeting moment frozen in stone, a reminder that even in an empire built on swords, some bridges were made to be walked together. As the setting sun paints the arch in gold, casting long shadows across the ruins, you can almost hear the echoes of 1,000 conversations, mergers haggling over grain prices, children reciting Latin verses, elders debating which gods to honor, all flowing through this quiet archway that refused to choose between worlds. Emerging from the golden sands of northern Algeria, the Arch of Trajan in Timgad stands not as a monument to war, but to the quiet power of urban dreams. Built around 100 AD, this soaring sandstone gateway marked the entrance to a meticulously planned colony for retired Roman soldiers, a place where military precision met civic ambition. Unlike the empire's blood-soaked triumphal arches, this structure celebrated something radical for its time: the promise of orderly streets, fresh aqueducts, and equal land plots for veterans. The inscriptions praised Trajan not as a conqueror, but as a patron who founded this colony for the honorable discharge of the Third Augustan Legion, turning swords into plowshares beneath the African sun. What makes this arch extraordinary is how it functioned as urban shorthand. Its three passageways mirrored Timgad's street grid, the central vault aligned with the Decumanus Maximus, while the side arches framed perpendicular roads in perfect right angles. Local guides still demonstrate how the arch's shadow at noon once acted as a sundial, its edge touching specific paving stones to mark market hours and civic meetings. The carvings reinforce this theme of harmony: no battle scenes, but intricate panels showing Trajan overseeing the distribution of farmland, his hand extended not in command but in equity. Even the materials whispered inclusivity. The warm yellow sandstone was quarried locally, a deliberate choice to root the structure in its environment rather than flaunt imported marble. Centuries later, the arch took on a second life as Timgad's fortunes shifted. By the 5th century, as Roman control waned, the arch was fortified with crude brickwork, its lower arches partially blocked to create arrow slits. The once celebratory gateway became a defensive choke point against Berber raids, its attic repurposed as a watchtower. Look closely at the stone today, and you'll spot the scars of this transformation: medieval mortar clinging like barnacles to Roman precision, charcoal smudges from century fires licking the once pristine reliefs. The arch's new role earned it the nickname Gateway to the Sahara, as caravans heading south would pause here for protection before venturing into the desert's uncertainty. Modern visitors often overlook the most telling detail. The arch's west face bears faint grooves where chariot wheels once scraped not from triumphant processions, but from decades of grain carts supplying the colony. These mundane marks tell the real story. Timgad thrived not on plunder, but on agriculture and trade. The structure's current isolation is deceptive. What appears today as a lone arch in the wilderness was once the vibrant heart of a bustling grid, its shadow falling on bakeries, bathhouses, and theaters now buried by sand. At dusk, when the low sun sets the sandstone ablaze, the arch seems to hover above the ruins like a mirage. Local Tuareg guides sometimes pause here to point out how the setting sun aligns with the central vault twice a year, framing the distant Aura's mountains in a fiery rectangle. It's a fitting tribute to an arch that never just stood still, first as a beacon of civic order, then a bulwark against chaos, and now a silent teacher reminding us that even stones can adapt when history demands it. Perched among the rugged peaks of Algeria's Tel Atlas Mountains, the Arch of Caracalla in Jamila doesn't just dominate the landscape, it melts into it. Built in 216 AD, this sandstone sentinel rises from the ruins of Kyiv, a prosperous Roman colony that thrived on grain and olive oil exports. The arch's genius lies in its integration with nature. Its warm, honey-colored stone mirrors the surrounding cliffs, as if the earth itself had shrugged this monument into existence. Unlike Rome's freestanding triumphal arches, this structure was designed to frame the mountains beyond, its central vault perfectly aligning with the steep ridge where Berber shepherds once guided their flocks. Jamila, meaning beautiful in Arabic, lived up to its name thanks to agricultural wealth. The arch's inscriptions boast of Caracalla's generosity, but the real benefactor was the fertile plains below. Walk through its passage today, and you'll notice grooves in the sandstone floor not from chariots, but from endless carts hauling grain to waiting ships at the Mediterranean coast. The decorative panels tell this story in stone. One relief shows Ceres, goddess of harvest, cradling sheaves of wheat beside a Roman official holding a tax ledger. Another depicts ocean waves cradling grain ships, their sails carved so thin the stone seems to billow. What makes this arch extraordinary is its preservation. Desert winds scoured nearby mosaics into oblivion, but the arch's sheltered position left its details startlingly crisp. Run your fingers along the capitals, and you'll feel the delicate acanthus leaves as sharp as the day they were chiseled. The attic hides a secret, faint red and blue pigment clinging to the underside of the cornice, remnants of paint that once made the arch glow like a jewel against the mountains. The most telling feature isn't carved in stone but absent from it. Unlike Caracalla's bloodthirsty monuments in Rome, there's not a single battle scene here, just bountiful harvests and merchant ships. This was an emperor's olive branch to a pragmatic colony that cared more about trade routes than military glory. Even the arch's positioning was diplomatic. It faced away from Rome toward the local Berber tribes whose cooperation kept grain flowing. Today, the arch stands guard over emptiness. The bustling forum it once overlooked is now a mosaic of wildflowers and scattered columns. Yet at dawn, when the first light strikes its curves, shadows pool in the grooves where millions of olive amphorae once rattled toward distant markets. The stones still hum with the whispers of merchants haggling over measures of wheat, their voices carried away by the same mountain winds that now sigh through the arch's lonely vault. Hidden among the rolling hills of eastern Serbia, the Arch of Galerius at Gamzograd whispers of an emperor's twilight years, a monument not to conquest but to retreat. Unlike the bombastic triumphal arches of Rome, this 4th century structure served as the ceremonial entrance to Felix Romuliana, Galerius's sprawling retirement palace named for his mother Romula. The arch's very existence reveals a startling fact. Even the most ruthless rulers dreamed of quiet endings. Galerius, the same emperor who brutally persecuted Christians, spent his final years constructing this opulent sanctuary, its stones infused with both imperial grandeur and intimate familial devotion. Approaching the arch today, you're struck by its materials: creamy Proconnesian marble from distant Marmara Island, purple porphyry columns reserved for imperial use, and intricate mosaics shimmering with gold leaf. Every element was calculated to awe. The central vault originally framed a view of the palace's inner sanctum, where Galerius planned to spend his retirement worshipping Jupiter and his deified predecessors. But look closer at the arch's decorative program, and the personal touches emerge. Vine scrolls intertwine with Romula's favorite flowers, while the spandrels feature not victory symbols but pastoral scenes of harvesting and hunting, a stark contrast to the blood-soaked reliefs on Galerius's Thessaloniki arch. The arch's true significance lies in its ritual function. Ancient sources describe how aging emperors underwent a ceremony called consecratio here, symbolically transitioning from mortal ruler to divine ancestor. The arch's alignment is key. It points directly toward the nearby Maggiora Hill, where Galerius and Romula were cremated in massive funeral pyres. Archaeologists discovered something chilling beneath its foundations: the bones of sacrificed bulls, their skulls arranged to face the rising sun, suggesting the arch doubled as both gateway and altar. Time has been both cruel and kind to this monument. When the Huns sacked Romuliana in the 5th century, they curiously left the arch intact, possibly daunted by its otherworldly sheen. Medieval Serbian kings later repurposed its marble for churches, but the arch's core endured, sheltered by the very rubble of the palace it once guarded. Modern conservators made a macabre discovery during restoration. The mortar between stones contained powdered brick and ox blood, an ancient Roman recipe that somehow hardened over centuries into something stronger than concrete. The most haunting detail isn't carved in stone but absent from it. Unlike Galerius's other monuments, this arch bears no boasts of military victories. Instead, faint graffiti on the inner vault shows crude drawings of a man fishing, and a woman spinning wool, perhaps scratched by the emperor's servants or even the ruler himself, momentary daydreams immortalized beside imperial grandeur. Today, the arch stands sentinel over an empty landscape, its shadow stretching each evening toward the distant burial mounds where Galerius and Romula became gods. The marble still gleams at dusk, catching the last light like a promise that even emperors, when tired of ruling the world, longed for home. Rising from the ruins of Jerash like a promise half-kept, the Arch of Hadrian tells a story of imperial ambition frozen in time. Built in 129 AD to welcome Emperor Hadrian during his grand tour of the eastern provinces, this towering sandstone gateway was never just a ceremonial flourish. It was meant to be the grand entrance to a sprawling new district that never materialized. Walk beneath its soaring central vault today, and you'll notice something peculiar. The upper section sits oddly squat compared to the elegant proportions below, its decorative elements abruptly unfinished. This wasn't rushed workmanship, it's a stone snapshot of plans abandoned when Hadrian's attention and funding shifted elsewhere. The arch's design reveals layers of calculated messaging. Standing nearly 13 meters tall, its facade mimics Roman triumphal arches, but with subtle Nabatean influences in the vine scroll carvings that frame the spandrels, a nod to the local Arab allies Rome depended on in this region. The attic originally bore an inscription honoring Hadrian, but the real marvel lies in what archaeologists found buried nearby: fragments of a colossal bronze statue, likely depicting the emperor on horseback that once crowned the structure. The scale suggests it would have been visible for miles, gleaming in the desert sun to announce Rome's presence. What makes this arch extraordinary is its ghostly context. Excavations uncovered paved roads radiating from its base, leading to empty fields where Hadrian envisioned a new quarter called Hadrianopolis. Ground-penetrating radar reveals the faint grid of undeveloped streets beneath the soil, along with foundation stones for never-built temples and baths. The city's elite had already begun constructing villas in anticipation, their half-finished mosaics now lying buried under olive groves. The arch became a gateway to nowhere, its grand staircase leading down to scrubland where only goats and shepherds passed. Local legends add poetic irony to this unfinished dream. Bedouins long called it Kanat ar-Rum, Arch of the Romans' Promise, and whispered that the spirits of disappointed merchants haunted its shadow. Modern conservators discovered something poignant in the mortar: tiny fingerprints of children pressed into the clay, likely from the offspring of laborers allowed to add their mark to the upper courses when imperial overseers lost interest. Today, the arch stands as both triumph and cautionary tale, its weathered stones framing not a bustling cityscape, but the rolling hills of northern Jordan, a reminder that even emperors' grandest visions could dissolve like desert mirages. The most telling detail isn't in the arch itself, but beneath it. Recent excavations exposed a time capsule of sorts, a foundation deposit containing Roman coins minted in Hadrian's honor, local pottery shards, and the skeleton of a sacrificial lamb arranged to face Mecca, added centuries later by Muslim builders who reused the stone. Each layer whispers how this monument outlived its original purpose, becoming a palimpsest of hopes, first imperial, then local, now archaeological. As sunset paints the sandstone pink, the arch's elongated shadow stretches precisely along the axis of those phantom streets, as if still trying to will Hadrian's unrealized city into existence. Beneath the looming shadow of Mount Vesuvius, the Arch of Tiberius in Pompeii stands as a silent witness to both daily life and catastrophic destruction. Unlike the grand imperial arches of Rome, this modest structure served a deeply local purpose, anchoring the city's forum as a hub of commerce, politics, and social exchange. Its survival of the eruption in 79 AD is nothing short of miraculous. While volcanic ash buried Pompeii under meters of suffocating debris, the arch's sturdy tufa blocks resisted collapse, emerging from excavation centuries later as one of the forum's few intact landmarks. What makes this arch extraordinary isn't its size or ornamentation, but its intimate connection to Pompeii's heartbeat. Flanking its sides once stood honorific statues of prominent citizens, their marble bases still bearing inscriptions that reveal a city fiercely proud of its local heroes. One pedestal honors Marcus Hulconius Rufus, a wealthy benefactor who funded Pompeii's amphitheater, while another commemorates a priestess named Eumatia, whose wool trade empire bankrolled the forum's grandest buildings. These weren't distant emperors, they were neighbors immortalized in stone, their likenesses greeting visitors who passed beneath the arch's worn keystone. The arch's positioning speaks volumes about its role in civic life. It didn't straddle a major road, but instead framed the forum's northeastern entrance, strategically placed to guide foot traffic past the meat market, treasury, and temple of Jupiter. Archaeologists discovered deep grooves in the pavement radiating from its base, evidence of countless sandals and cartwheels that wore down the stones over generations. The arch even served as a primitive bulletin board. Its plastered surfaces once bore painted announcements for gladiatorial games and political campaigns, their faded pigments still detectable under ultraviolet light. Time capsules abound in its construction. The volcanic rock used for its core contains tiny fragments of pumice and crystals from Vesuvius itself, suggesting builders quarried locally long before the mountain's fury was fully understood. During excavations in 1869, workers found a hollow chamber within the arch's attic filled with charred wheat and olive pits, likely offerings left by merchants hoping for divine favor. Most poignant are the cavities in the arch's piers where iron clamps once secured the statues. These metal supports were pried out by looters after the eruption, leaving ghostly negative spaces that mirror the voids left by Pompeii's lost citizens. Today, the arch stands stripped of its statues but rich with untold stories. At midday, sunlight passes through its opening to cast a rectangle of light on the forum's stones, a phenomenon that aligns perfectly with the summer solstice, hinting at possible astronomical significance. Visitors who pause beneath its shadow can almost hear the echoes of a vanished world. The clatter of dice games played by off-duty soldiers on its steps, the haggling of silk traders, the distant roar of crowds at the amphitheater just blocks away. Unlike Rome's bombastic triumphal arches, this unassuming gateway reminds us that history isn't just made by emperors, it's written in the daily comings and goings of ordinary people, their footsteps forever preserved in volcanic ash. Rising from the rugged plains of southern Turkey, the Arch of Septimius Severus in Anaxarchus stands as a masterclass in ancient engineering, built not just for glory but for survival. Unlike the ostentatious arches of Rome, this monument served a practical purpose along the vital trade routes linking the Mediterranean to the Euphrates. Its weathered limestone blocks bear scars from centuries of earthquakes, yet the structure endures thanks to ingenious design choices. The builders employed a flexible mortar mix infused with crushed pottery, allowing the arch to sway during tremors without collapsing. Notice the deliberate asymmetry in its foundations. The northern piers are slightly thicker, compensating for the region's frequent seismic shifts from that direction. The arch's bilingual inscriptions tell a story of cultural crossroads. Carved in both Latin and Greek, they honor Septimius Severus while acknowledging the local Cilician populace who maintained their Hellenistic identity under Roman rule. The Greek text isn't merely a translation, it subtly emphasizes the emperor's patronage of local festivals and infrastructure, a diplomatic touch absent from the more militaristic Latin version. Look closer at the weathered lettering and you'll spot faint traces of red pigment in the Greek characters, likely added to make them more visible to passing caravans. What makes this arch extraordinary is its rural isolation. Far from any major city, it functioned as both milestone and propaganda for travelers navigating the rugged Taurus Mountains. The carvings cater to this audience. Instead of battle scenes, reliefs depict laden camels and merchants shaking hands, celebrating commerce rather than conquest. The attic once housed a sundial visible from the road, its shadow marking not just hours but the changing tariffs at the nearby customs station. Time has revealed the arch's secret resilience. When a 1946 earthquake toppled nearby Byzantine churches, the Roman structure remained standing. Modern engineers discovered why hidden iron clamps connecting the voussoirs were deliberately over-engineered, their lead casing allowing movement while preventing rust. The most poetic detail lies beneath the keystone, where archaeologists found a time capsule of sorts, a hollow containing Severus-era coins, a curl of papyrus listing toll rates, and a single olive pit, perhaps a builder's snack or an offering to the gods of safe passage. Today, the arch frames not processions but flocks of sheep, its shadow stretching across fields where the whispers of ancient muleteers still seem to linger in the wind. In the heart of Istanbul, where tram wires buzz above ancient cobblestones, the Arch of Theodosius stands as a puzzle wrapped in marble, a monument built from borrowed glory. Erected around 390 AD to celebrate Emperor Theodosius I's military victories, this arch wasn't just a celebration of conquest, it was a radical recycling project. Nearly every stone in its structure was plundered from earlier monuments, a practice called spolia that transformed this gateway into a living scrapbook of Constantinople's layered past. Look closely at the mismatched columns flanking its central vault, some fluted, others smooth, and you'll spot the telltale seams where they were hastily trimmed to fit. The arch's entire north pier was salvaged from a 2nd century temple to Apollo, its original pagan inscriptions still faintly visible beneath Christian crosses scratched by later hands. The real story hides in the missing pieces. Once, this arch boasted a triumphant bronze statue of Theodosius in a 4-horse chariot, but what remains are empty pedestals and broken clamps where metal was looted during the Fourth Crusade. The attic's weathered reliefs tell a darker tale. Panels celebrating victories over Goths and usurpers were deliberately defaced when political winds shifted, their faces chiseled away to damn disgraced generals to oblivion. Modern laser scans revealed something startling beneath these erasures, ghostly outlines of older, erased figures from the original stones, creating a palimpsest of power struggles spanning centuries. What makes this arch extraordinary isn't just what was taken, but how it endured. When earthquakes shattered much of Constantinople in 557, the arch survived thanks to its chaotic construction. The very irregularity of its repurposed stones created flexible joints that absorbed seismic shocks. Later Ottoman rulers, recognizing its symbolic weight, incorporated it into the city's fabric. 16th century miniatures show it as a backdrop for imperial processions, its Roman eagles now sharing space with Turkish calligraphy plaques. The most poignant detail lies in the arch's shadow. At midday, sunlight filters through gaps where missing sculptures once stood, casting shapes on the pavement that eerily resemble the lost chariot's outline. Local vendors still avoid setting up stalls beneath these phantom forms, a silent nod to the arch's lingering presence as both monument and oracle. Today, as electric buses rumble past its time-worn curves, the structure whispers a lesson older than empires, that survival sometimes means embracing broken pieces and calling them strength. Gleaming beneath Kyiv's skyline, the Arch of the Golden Gate isn't just a reconstructed monument. It's a time capsule of collisions between Viking ambition, Byzantine splendor, and Slavic resilience. Originally built in the 11th century under Yaroslav the Wise, this fortified gateway formed the grand entrance to medieval Kyiv, its name inspired by Constantinople's famed Golden Gate. But look beyond the reconstructed golden domes and weathered brickwork, and you'll uncover a design that speaks in layers. The arch's massive oak doors, once sheathed in gilded copper to dazzle approaching ambassadors, swung on hinges forged by Scandinavian blacksmiths, a detail that whispers of Kyivan Rus's deep ties to Viking traders and mercenaries who plied the Dnieper River. The brickwork itself is a living recipe, alternating rows of thin Byzantine-style brick and local pink quartzite, a fusion of imperial technique and earthy Ukrainian materials. This arch's survival is a saga in itself. When Mongol invaders sacked Kyiv in 1240, they burned the original gatehouse, leaving only skeletal walls buried under centuries of soil. For generations, locals passed the overgrown mound unaware of the history beneath their feet, until Soviet archaeologists unearthed its foundations in the 1970s. What happened next was pure Cold War theater. The USSR ordered a full-scale reconstruction, not out of historical reverence, but to showcase Slavic unity under Soviet rule. The rebuilt arch's towering whitewashed facade and socialist realist murals subtly recast Yaroslav as a proto-communist ruler, his Christian legacy downplayed in favor of secular state power. Irony drips from every stone, a medieval Christian symbol resurrected by an atheist regime, its golden crosses restored only after Ukraine's independence in 1991. Today, the arch pulses with new meaning. Climb its creaking wooden stairs, and you'll find Ukrainian schoolchildren tracing their fingers over 11th century graffiti. Crude ship drawings left by Viking guards stationed here a millennium ago. The museum inside doesn't shy from hard truths. Exhibits juxtapose Yaroslav's golden age with timelines of foreign domination, from Mongol Khans to Moscow's Tsars. Modern artists have added their own voice. The surrounding park features temporary installations where steel Cossack swords emerge from flower beds, their blades reflecting the arch's golden domes like a dialogue across eras. The most powerful symbolism lies in what visitors do here at dusk. Every evening, Ukrainians gather beneath the arch to sing folk ballads, not the Soviet-era anthems once promoted here, but ancient epics about Cossack freedom and resistance. The acoustics are uncanny. The vaulted passage amplifies voices into a chorus that seems to rise toward the mosaic of the Virgin Orans inside the gate chapel, her outstretched arms echoing Ukraine's own posture between East and West. During the Maidan protests of 2014, the arch became a pilgrimage site for demonstrators, its stones absorbing prayers and promises. Now, as war rumbles in the east, the golden dome's reflection in nearby puddles creates a fleeting double image, a reminder that resilience, like history, runs deeper than any single era's scars. These 30 archways stand as stone poetry, each curve an inscription whispering stories far grander than their physical forms. From the blood-stained propaganda of Rome's triumphal arches to the quiet dignity of merchant-funded gateways in provincial towns, they prove that no two arches ever served the same purpose. Some were built to intimidate, others to inspire, some to mark borders, others to erase them. The Arch of Titus shouts military conquest with every carved menorah, while the Arch of the Sergii in Pula murmurs familial love through weathered inscriptions. The Gateway of India absorbed colonialism's contradictions and became a stage for independence, just as Syria's Arch of Triomphe in Palmyra crumbled under modern conflict yet still symbolizes cultural resilience. What unites them isn't their shape, but their role as frozen moments in humanity's ceaseless churn. The Arch of Trajan in Timgad records the promise of retirement for battle-weary soldiers, while the Arch of Germanicus in France became a grieving parent's tribute to lost children. Each one is a time capsule not just of empires but of the artisans who carved them, the laborers who hoisted these stones, and the generations who repurposed their shadows for markets, fortresses, or clandestine rituals. Even the failures, like Hadrian's abandoned arch in Jerash, tell us more about ambition's limits than any polished success ever could. So here's your challenge: step beyond the postcard-perfect arches of Rome and Paris. Seek out the ones that don't make most guidebooks where the real magic happens. Walk beneath the Arch of Janus in Rome's forgotten Forum Boreum and feel the weight of its 4 watching faces. Chase the solstice light through Tunisia's Arch of Alexander Severus, where Roman and Berber traditions merge in stone. Touch the bullet scars on Libya's Arch of Marcus Aurelius, still standing after 2,000 years of storms and wars. And when you find that one arch that speaks to you, maybe it's the lonely Arch of Cabanes in Spain, or maybe it's Kyoto's Rashomon Gate, rebuilt yet forever haunted by legends. Share it below. Tell us what moved you. Was it the craftsmanship, the history, or that eerie sense of touching something meant to outlast us all? Because arches aren't just relics. They're invitations to wander, to travel, and to add your own story to the layers they've already collected. However you meet them, remember, every keystone overhead is a handshake across centuries, and every shadow they cast is a bridge between their world and yours. Now it's your turn. Where will you step through